So as we breathe, remember, and connect to build off the taglines of this work, let's turn to our family environment. So these Wednesdays, our focus is on bringing character strengths and mindfulness to our family environment, or whoever it is that we're living with right now. It might be a partner, it might be children, it might be siblings, it might be grandparents, it might be parents, or you might be by yourself and you're connecting with your family by phone and by internet. Or you might maybe we're with friends or something else. So I'm using the word family loosely, whoever is in your living quarters during these times of physical distancing. So perhaps we might kick this off with a statement, or not a statement, but a very short clip here. And I wonder if you might relate to this. So let me share with you this little clip on my phone here.
Because of coronavirus, you are going to be quarantined, but you have a choice. Do you A, quarantine with your wife and child, or B?
So in case you missed that, let me play that one more time.
Because of coronavirus, you are going to be quarantined, but you have a choice. Do you A, quarantine with your wife and child, or B?
Just some levity, but very hilarious, I think, or I should say we think. And, you know, I think that captures some of what's going on for a lot of us with the challenges with being in our family environment at this point. You know, on one level, what could be more wonderful and incredible that we get to spend time with these people that probably many of us would say they matter more to us than anybody else in the world. So it's this enormous opportunity, so wonderful and incredible. And simultaneous to that, there is this heightened stress. We're around those people that push our buttons, that know our weak points better than anybody else, that get us upset and reactive more quickly than probably anybody. So it's an incredible juxtaposition that we're challenged with in these close quarters with these people that we love. And it's as if we, in some ways, have no escape. And we're there with all the irritations. And for some people, it feels like a prison. For other people, it feels like a challenge. And then other people, it feels like a lot of joy and connection. And probably for all of us, it's a mixture of all of the above. So I want to then invite us to consider a couple things to try to discover more of those joy moments. And so the first strategy is just simply called find the moments. So among the stress, among the chaos of the day, can you find the moments? That's my question for all of us. So for example, the other day I was working on my computer in the middle of 10 different projects, also trying to kind of manage things with my kids. And I'm standing there kind of working furiously. And my daughter comes in, who's 4 years old. Her name is Maya. And she says in her little sweet voice, "Hey, Daddy, I made a picture for you." That sounds actually how she sounds. And so, you know, one of the things I always committed to, you know, way before this, once I had kids, is that I would always turn away from work to the kids whenever there was that quote unquote interruption. And so I did turn to her and connected with her, and she shows me this picture here. Show my screen, if you can see it. So she does these about once a day, these kinds of pictures. And in this particular picture, I think my wife and I are just the circles. We're not complete bodies, which kind of shows we're maybe just partly there for our kids at this point. We're there with big smiles, but not fully there. And then her and her siblings are there in the middle. And then the other day she did something very similar, and you could see she included the dog in this one, and I'm kind of blocked out slightly fishing, which I don't even do, but I'm fishing, and I'm blocked out of the picture a little bit, but at least I'm in it because my wife's not even in the picture. But so she's doing these kinds of things, and these are some of those moments for me. It's different for all of us, but for me to really sit there and to appreciate and to connect with her and to see her smile and to take, a minute or two to ask her questions about what she did and to praise her for the hard work of it, and how I was so grateful that she did that. So that's a moment for me. And everybody will find their own moments. I mean, even if we take one of the more extreme examples right now, a healthcare worker in the hospital working with patients with coronavirus, can they find their moments? Well, certainly they can as well. Perhaps their moments amongst the chaos and the kind of unimaginable stuff that so many are dealing with, they could find the smile of their colleague, and maybe their colleague makes a funny gesture and they have a little moment of connection from across the hallway. Or maybe they finish helping out a patient who's tearfully grateful to them, and the healthcare worker just notices that tearful gratitude and appreciates it. So that's a moment. So these are moments that we can capture and that we can notice. Very recently, actually it was yesterday, after yesterday's makeup session of United in Strengths, I had yesterday just gone nonstop. One of those times when it is really difficult to even catch your breath. So some of you were in the Monday or Tuesday session and heard me talk about catching your breath. That wasn't really for you. I was talking to myself when I was talking about catching your breath and the importance of that. So yesterday I barely caught my breath as I made it through the day. And then it was around 6:30 or so, and I settled on the patio, and my wife had made this kind of unique cocktail. And the two of us sat out there and we looked at the trees. We looked at the pond in the backyard. There was a gentle wind, and we just sat there and savored the beauty of it and the moment. And I was in that moment, really savoring it and appreciating it. I even kind of just opened up my arms and just really did what I could to prolong the positive. And even one of my kids came in, and we wanted it to just be the two of us, but one of the kids came in, and so he sat with us as well, and we kind of welcomed that and appreciated that. So that ended up being this wonderful moment. And that was savoring. And so savoring, by the way, is different than mindfulness. So savoring means we're intentionally trying to keep the positive there. We're intentionally trying to prolong the moment. We're prolonging that bite of chocolate, keeping the positive emotions going. That's called savoring, whereas mindfulness is different than that. Mindfulness is about observing the rise and the fall of the pleasant, the unpleasant, the mundane. It's not about forcing in the positive or prolonging the positive or having to overcome every negative. Mindfulness is observing, becoming aware, sitting with, noticing what's going on. So this was savoring, and certainly there's some mindfulness in savoring, but the meta approach there was savoring. So I would encourage all of us as another piece in the finding the moments. We find those moments and we try to savor them. We try to prolong them as much as we can. And by the way, that might be 5 seconds, or maybe it's 5 minutes where we prolong the positive. So we can do that in the craziness, and we can help others to do that, to appreciate those moments. Now, one other strategy that I want to offer today before we do the meditation experience is really a key starting point and something that we'll talk about in most of our sessions, and it's called strength spotting. And this is the key starting point really for anybody working with character strengths, as many of you know. And we'll talk, since this is about family and working with people in your environment, moving forward, we'll talk about strength spotting in others, but of course you can do this in yourself as well. And strength spotting in others tends to be much easier to do. So it's a good starting point. When I've asked very small groups of people, so small groups of teenagers to groups of hundreds of adults, is it easier for you to spot strengths in yourself or to spot strengths in other people? And I just kind of take an informal tally. About 90%, I find. Again, this is not a statistic. This is just a simple observation. But about 90% of people consistently seem to find that it's easier to spot strengths in others than in oneself. So it's a great starting point for us. And it's a lens that we can put on. So we can try to look at things without that. We can operate in our day-to-day default, and things are fairly blurry. We're not seeing all that clearly. But then when we take the mindset of looking for the good, of looking for one of these 24 character strengths in absolutely any action, underline that, any action that's going on, we can find the character strengths. It might be a small amount of the character strength, like a level 1 on a scale of 1 to 10, but we can always find something. I might notice my oldest son working hard on his schoolwork, and I tell him that I appreciate his perseverance with really sticking with it. Often he does them in like 20-minute periods. So good job sticking with it for the full 20 minutes. That was very perseverant of you. Or I might notice one of my children asking a question, and I might say, I really appreciate your curiosity. Even though 5 minutes before they just dumped paint all over the floor. And so I let go of and I maybe use a little bit of forgiveness for the paint, because I don't want to miss what's next. And what's next was curiosity. In that perseverant example, right before he worked hard for 20 minutes, he was running around the house like a maniac. And so I let go of that maniac running. Maybe I call it zest, maybe I don't, but I let that go. And then I turn to perseverance. So these are strength spotting that we can do. We do it internally, kind of thinking about it, but it's even better if we can say it out loud to the family member, to the spouse, to the boyfriend, girlfriend, and so on. Now let me ask you to spot a little bit of strengths in what I'm about to say. Okay, so it's a little test. You can kind of just keep it to yourself, but just kind of attend to this and see if you can spot strengths in about every 3 or 4 words that I say. Okay. So yesterday there was a lot of chaos with my kids, and I set them up with their learning tablets and some virtual learning activities and some flashcards. And I knew I needed to get back to work desperately, actually. So I walked away quickly after setting them up. And then they asked for something else. And I turned around, I gritted my teeth, I took a deep breath and smiled. Maybe it was a fake smile, maybe not. And responded to their 5th request before then returning to work. Did you spot some strengths in that? I'll say it again, and I'll say the character strengths while I say it again. See if you caught some of these.
And Ryan, we'll see whether you have strength blindness like so many other people, because you may notice strengths that Ryan doesn't spot in his own story. So look out for those.
That's right. Ready for the challenge. So amongst the chaos with my kids, I set them up with learning tablets, virtual learning, and flashcards. Love of learning, curiosity. For them, self-regulation, prudence for me. I knew I needed to get back to work. I was desperate, actually. Strength of hope. I walked away quickly, zest. Then they asked for something else. I gritted my teeth, prudence, took a deep breath, self-regulation, and smiled, humor. Maybe it was fake, maybe it wasn't, more humor. And then I went back to work after their fifth request was met. Perseverance.
So you missed a few according to our audience, Ryan. So people spotted judgment. Obviously, you were weighing up the pros and cons of the different things that you were having to balance there. You were striking that balance. There was some leadership in there at the onset. You had to set the tone and create the environment where everyone was going to be able to move forward. We also heard quite a bit of forgiveness because there was that interruption, and you may have mentioned that, but so many people brought it out that I wanted to mention it. And another one we heard was bravery, because it is pretty brave to plan a full day's craziness of work with 3 small children who need constant stimulation in the house. So there were a few others in there that you didn't call out.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And I love that there's so many people spotting character strengths. And it's so wonderful to see. So that's what we want to be doing. And that if we practice it here, then we're more likely to then carry it out into our daily life. So thanks for diving in that way. And I just want to say one more thing, and then Ruth is going to offer another example here. And mine is very brief here because it has to do with spousal stuff. So I've been giving you more examples with kids. So with my wife, just in general, I've noticed certainly in the, so it's this juxtaposition. I've noticed this elevation of conflict, tension, difficulties, arguments, but then I've noticed an elevation of my gratitude for her and being so grateful for all that she's done with the kids. And like yesterday when I couldn't breathe, she was the one that stepped up and did everything for the kids yesterday to help us get through. And she was still seeing clients remotely. And so an elevation of gratitude to her for so much. So this juxtaposition that we're dealing with, I think we just need to be honest with it. That's what mindfulness is about, being honest about these kinds of dialectics that happen within us. So maybe that spousal example can lead over to you, Ruth, and your line is muted, but over to you to share your example. And then
so I actually wanted to tie this, Ryan, to the topics that have come up in our first 2 sessions. So one of the things that is very striking to me, my top character strength, and I know one of your highest, is appreciation of beauty and excellence. And I can't imagine my life without it. But what we've noticed with the people coming to the group is that people are leaning on that strength more, even if it's not necessarily one of their top strengths. So people have commented on things like going out into nature and appreciating nature. And we know from research that getting out into nature calms us down, reduces stress, increases our creativity, makes us more likely to come up with a creative solution to whatever problems we're facing. So that's very consistent. And I was struck by this topic today of the people we're around and how do we use appreciation in that environment. So I will say that I'm fortunate that my kids are long grown, so they're taking care of themselves, doing whatever they're doing. They're not little kids that need entertainment. They do need a lot of texting, I've noticed, but not a lot of entertainment. And so it's me and my husband here, which is essentially the introvert's dream. So we're more than happy to be, we're not happy with the circumstances, obviously, but it's not a stress for us. It would be more stressful for us if we were in a house full of people and could not get away from them. But I did realize that when we were going to be quarantined, that I was a little like the man at the beginning on the video of, I'll take option B rather than being shut in with my one and only. And I made a decision to find something to specifically appreciate, not quite gratitude. It wasn't quite I'm a grateful for thing, but to mindfully look for things I appreciate about him. And, I'm getting a little choked up. And to express it. So using the technique of C, S-E-A, so see the strength, explain the strength that I see, and then appreciate it. Why does it matter? Why does that strength matter to me? And it has transformed things. And you mentioned, Ryan, that there's more tension. We are still on top of each other. But we've been treating arguments and things with more humor than we ever have before. And he's being appreciative back. So you start being appreciative of the other person and they start reciprocating. And so that has really, really helped us. That one, taking that strength that is so meaningful to me and looking for a way to use it in relation to the person who's taking up my space has really helped this be much less stressful than I think it would have been. We would have been, you know, at each other's throats by now, basically. So I just wanted to share that, because sometimes people ask me, how do you use appreciation in relation to others when we think of it as being, you know, admiring nature or some sort of skillful performance or something like that. So I just wanted to share that my top strength is helping me, even when I wouldn't necessarily have thought it was an obvious one to use around my husband. But don't tell him I said so.
We'll just send him the recording. But no, beautiful.
Yes.
Appreciation and appreciation of beauty, and then also the humor is a wonderful little anecdote you added there as well. I love that you're noticing that. And so that leads me to question, what are the rest of you noticing in your relationships? What is shifting? I mean, again, we could talk about all sorts of negatives that are shifting, but what are the positives that are shifting? And maybe not in all of your relationships, maybe some of them. So thanks for that, Ruth. And we have a meditation today, but it's actually very brief. And so we knew that going in, so we wanted to spend a little bit longer time on this input part and shorter on the meditation for today. Those of you that have, some of you have partaken in my mindfulness-based strengths practice program and studied some of that work of integrating mindfulness and character strengths over the years. And you'll know that I'm a big fan of very short mindfulness meditations, because I'm very practical and I want things that are very practical for myself, but also for others. And especially nowadays, people don't have time for long 45 to 1 hour meditations, or at least a lot of people don't. If you do, that's wonderful. So this is about as short as you can get, this meditation we're about to do. It's called the mindful pause. And it's simply 2 steps. I'll tell you the steps, and then we can practice it together. And I'm sure we'll practice it in other times in this United in Strengths work. The first step is to, as it says, pause, and to really short circuit that autopilot mind of us that's thinking about all sorts of things, that's worrying, that's wandering about. So we short circuit all that worrying, and we just come fully into this in-breath and out-breath for 15 seconds. And then step 2 at the end, and I'll prompt you for it, is we end with a question for ourselves, which is, how might I use one of my character strengths right now? And there's a step 3, you listen. You listen to yourself and to what intuitively comes up, what automatically comes up as a thought, as an image, as a feeling, as a word, what comes up. And of course, if there's a step 4, then you would actually then use that strength in some way in your thinking, your feeling, or your actions. But I try to keep it simple, just those 2 main steps. Breathe for 15 seconds and ask yourself that question. So let's practice that together. So as you take on a posture of strength, with your eyes open or closed, come to your in-breath and out-breath for about 15 seconds. And ask yourself this: which of my character strengths might I use right now?